Hey all, hello and welcome, Tony Bing here. For this beginner's guide video we will be covering one of my favourite heroes in both the game and from the film universe as well, and that would be Blade, the rather awesome Blade at that. Now in this series of beginner's guide videos we will look at the primary attributes and offensive and defensive traits in heroes. If they have any special resources we'll discuss that as well. We'll then have a look at a few of their costumes. We'll check out their signature and ultimate skill, and then we'll finish up doing some gameplay run-throughs where we show off various different builds they may have, be it, let's say, a series of melee skills and even a series of range skills. We'll check them out as well. But for the first section of the video, we'll look at the primary attributes and the offensive and defensive traits. We'll start off here looking at the offensive trait first then, and that's Born to Strife. So with this, you gain a flat 3% critical hit chance. Darter's type is fighter, and you gain bonus damage from the strength and fighting attributes, so you'll be wanting to stack fighting given the fact that's got the crit rating multiplier. We then have the defensive trait. This is called Daywalker, so it has health on hit, 279 it offers. Darter's type is versatile, and you get a multiplier to both defense and dodge there, and also Blade has the close quarters 8% damage reduction on melee hit as well. Now when we look at the resource, this is where things get really quite different and make Blade very unique. He actually has two resources. The first and more simpler one being ammo. Now with this, as you use your gun powers and certain melee powers, you will actually spend ammo. Now it doesn't naturally regenerate. When it runs out, it starts to rapidly regenerate at a rate of 20% per second, so that's essentially 5 seconds. You need to wait till you've got it back up. Now you do have certain talents and skills you can actually use that can help this, where you can either reload the ammo or you can get it to drain a little bit slower, but we'll look at that later on in the video. For the secondary resource we have something called Thirst. Now with this, as you attack it will start to build up. When it's full, Blade becomes starving. This will reduce his damage output by 10% and cause 8% of Blade's maximum health to be lost per second. Now while you're starving, you regenerate 2% of your maximum health when you hit an enemy, so while starving you want to stay engaged with the enemy. Now you're possibly thinking this mechanic doesn't look very good. There's lots of negatives and where's the positives here. Now this is where the serum that we can see mentioned down here comes into it. Now there's really 3 different specs that Blade can use to really change his playstyle. The first one is Never Sated. Now if you combine Starving status with Never Sated, you can actually get a 65% damage boost as well as 100% crit damage rating and brute damage rating, as well as 15% attack speed as well there when you have full starving stacks and also pop the serum, so that's pretty amazing. If you look at the second option you've got, this is a more balanced one. It's called Steady Regimen. With this you'll gain a 30% damage rating and 30% attack speed and movement speed while the serum buff is active. And finally we have In Control, which is brilliant for tanking. What this does is it offers you health regen, and it also gives you an extra 10% multiplier to both defense and dodge. So with your defensive archetype you'd be looking at 30% overall in total. This really can make Blade tanky, so it's good if you're maybe playing, you're a bit tired, you don't want to concentrate, stick on this spec and you can really, it's easy street, it really is. But with all that covered, let's have a look at a few of these costumes now. First costume we look at then is his default, and this is a modern costume and it really does look great with the trench coat and all the various ammo pouches all over it. I do like this one a lot. We then have the original costume, and to be honest I don't know how I feel about this. It's probably good for hardcore fans of Blade, but it's a bit strange. Finishing up we have the San Francisco costume, and this is really the closest thing we have to the movie version of Blade, so I do like this one a lot. The double katanas as well is pretty awesome. But with the costumes out of the way, let's now have a look at, I was going to say the signature, but let's have a look at his signatures. So as hinted at just a moment ago, we actually have 2 signatures with Blade, which is pretty awesome. We have a melee and a ranged one. The first one we look at, this is a ranged one called My Namesake. Now this is essentially the movie does at the end of Blade 1 when he kicks all the various serum injectors into Deacon Frost. So you've got the 10 hits, you've got a large damage packet in the final hit, which also has a 100% brutal strike chance. So this can do a huge amount of damage, and while you're channeling this you also have 80% damage resistance as well. And we now have the melee signature, which is killing strokes. Now with this one, it's a big large sword AoE attack and can be used up to 3 times within 6 seconds. The first hit gives you physical damage and invulnerability for a huge 6 seconds. The second hit, which is called Harvest Moon, is another physical damage packet, and then a Terrify, and then the final one, which is called Shattered Moon, is physical damage, and this has a 100% critical hit chance. I really do like this because it covers a large area of the screen. It's great for clearing trash, and the 6-second invulnerability really is pretty great as well. So let's now actually look at the ultimate skill for him. For the ultimate, we have a skill called Just Stay Down, and this actually reminds me of the Christian Bale film Equilibrium, the way he moves bouts and shoots the guns, so that's really good. So you've got the physical damage, it does 18 hits. At the end he'll throw out lots of UV grenades. All your hits with this will actually critically hit. It will stun the enemy, you're invulnerable for the duration of the power, and on top of that it gives you a bonus to both strength and speed. Now if you've been paying attention during this video, you'll know that Blade's primary attributes are actually strength and fighting. So this, I think, is potentially an oversight and hopefully something that will be looked at a later date, and the speed will be swapped out for fighting instead there. But let's now have a look at the melee side of things as we run through the Shocker terminal. So we'll start off here by looking at his main melee spend, and that would be any means necessary. Now when you actually use your serum, which we'll talk about in just a moment, you gain a damage bonus rating of 10% and also 10% attack speed as well there. We then have his crash down skill, and that's called Party Crasher. Now with this, it provides vulnerability as well as Terrify, so it's a really nice skill. Jump right in amongst them and just terrify them and just send them running really. The next skill we then look at, this would be Toxin Loaded Gauntlets. So when you punch the enemy with a barrage of attacks, you will mobilise them. You do the 8 hits, and also you'll notice it says vulnerability from Grievous Wounds effects. And what Grievous Wounds is, Blade has one type of bleed, doesn't actually stack, several skills can do it, so you want to pick at least one skill which can provide Grievous Wounds, and in this particular run through we'll highlight such a skill. But what this also has, the Toxic Loaded Gauntlets, it has a death explosion, so if you hit an enemy and they die from the attack, they'll explode and hit other enemies as well, so it's a great skill. We then look at Stake Through the Heart, and this one, not surprisingly, has got an execute tag, and it does bonus damage to enemies that are bleeding. And then we have Whiplash, and this is probably one of my favourite skills in the game. You run around using basically a whip with a dagger at the end of it, shredding enemies. It hits 4 times per second, it applies Grievous Wounds, that's the bleed we've talked about, and on top of that it actually provides Weaken as well. It's a great skill, really do like it, you can see this now. Now finishing up, we'll actually discuss the serum, and this is very important to Blade and the particular setup we've got for running through this terminal. So for this terminal we went for Never Sated, so that's the high risk reward build. So with this you will lose a lot of health while you're playing, but you can also do a ton of damage, as you've seen just there when we absolutely annihilated Shocker. So the way it works is you build up your starving, hit your serum, and you'll get that huge damage bonus rating as well there. But that was nice and fun, that run through. Let's now have a look at the range side of things for him. And we'll now have a look at the range side of things. So the main spender we're using here is Pump Action, so that's a trusty shotgun that he's using in Blade 1. You can actually use Hand Cannon as a basic as well, so that is another option there. Now I'll quickly mention with Pump Action that, like the main spender on the melee build, you gain a bonus when you activate serum. So with this it's 25% damage bonus and also 25% critical and brutal damage bonus. Next up we have UV Grenade. This is our vulnerability applicator, and through talents we can have this, so when we fire it out it does 3 flashes, so it looks really pretty great. Now a skill that pairs up really well with this is Hyper Toxin Grenade, which is another great one for taking out lots of targets. So this also provides vulnerability to Grievous Wounds. This is similar to the Hypertoxin Gauntlets, and enemies that are defeated by it will explode as well, similar to that other skill. We then have Stake Thrower, so this is our execute for the range side of things. Damage bonus against targets that are bleeding, and you actually gain numerous charges with this as well, so you can fire it off relatively often. Now, a skill we'll look at, and there's a few different variations of this, is the glaive. That's the one that when Blades in Blade 1, they're first seen in the nightclub and they're all surrounding him, and he throws it round and it takes them all out. This is what that is. It's a glaive he's using. There is actually a melee version of it. We didn't have space to show off in the last preview of Dr. Octopus where he throws it round in the circle, which is pretty great. But this is another Grievous Wounds applicator here, and this particular one, it will bounce between enemies and it hits up to 7 different enemies there, so that's really quite nice. It does look pretty great. Final skill we look at, this will be Whittle into Kindling. This is in our Grievous Wounds applicator, and it's essentially a trash clearer where he whips out 2 machine pistols and just starts spraying the enemies with bullets, so it's a pretty nice skill. It also gains a damage bonus from the attack speed as well there. So let's check out these skills as we run through here. So there we go, we had it execute there, and then we've got our trusty shotgun. We're following it up with the signature. The reason for this is it actually regenerates 100% of our ammo, and the build I'm using isn't optimal, so the chances are I may actually run out of ammo here, but it allows me to show off all the skills together. If it does look like I'm running out, what I'll do is something a bit special. There we go, we'll go for that. We'll do the ultimate and show that off. Awesome looking. That was great. Really enjoyed this one, been looking forward to doing Blade Beginner's Guide for a while, and I hope after watching this anyone that was maybe on the fence will say they're going to give him a shot, because he's a really great character and I'm a huge fan of him in the game. Now, for the next Beginner's Guide, I believe I'm looking at Doctor Strange for this particular one, so keep an eye out for that, and I'll see you all again soon.